Welcome to the Power Platform Show. Thanks for joining me today. I hope today's guest inspires and educates you on the possibilities of the Microsoft Power Platform. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome back to the Ecosystem Podcast. This week, we've got three of us on the show, William Dorrington, Andrew Welch, and myself, Mark Smith. Our other colleagues in crime haven't been able to make the show. Family commitments, etc., preventing it. But we're going to have a fun day today. And today, one of my pet things at the moment is a term coined by none other than Steve Mordew in a discussion that we were having with Ryan Cunningham at the recent MVP Summit. Steve Mordew arranged a side meeting with Ryan. We went back to his offices and we discussed something, a concern.
Are you just name dropping?
I'm name dropping.
Okay.
Of course I'm name dropping.
What is this? Okay.
Guess what? Guess what? Not only was Ryan Cunningham in the room, Ryan Jones was also in the room. How many other names do you want me to put in there?
Do you know I met Queen Elizabeth once?
Did you really? Do you know what? I went to her house.
Did you? So do millions of others every year.
I did a tour of Buckingham Palace. Yes.
So how did you get through security? Christ.
So all right. So Will, Mark knows Ryan Cunningham, Ryan Jones, and Steve Mordew. I met the Queen. Who do you know? Who do you know? Drop a name, bro.
Mark Smith. Good friends with him. Great
that's
guy.
A good one.
Oh,
That's a good one.
Wow. Come on, Will. We know you're from aristocracy in the United Kingdom.
Do you know, actually, I had a most epic trip back from a client the other day. The clients we partied with until about 3 a.m. in the morning. Fantastic. I had to get a 4:30 train. Not so fantastic.
This is the experience when you work with Curve Digital.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. Recruiting right now. So in addition to that, about an hour and 38 minutes sleep, I get in my cabin on the my carriage on the train, and this guy walks in. I'm like, I recognize that guy. He gets his breakfast from a little breakfast trolley, and he speaks to the lady. I was like, no. And you may only get this if you've been long enough in England. He was the guy from Grand Designs, Kevin MacLeod.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And yeah, it was just, so I like my Andrew's like, I have no fucking idea what you're going on about. But it was
I've only been here 3.5 years. I'm sorry.
It was just such a beautiful moment. But he just wouldn't shut up. But a lovely guy, but I was so tired and hungover and he just kept speaking. But if anyone's going to bother me at that time in that state, I'm glad it was Kevin MacLeod and the irony was he was about to go and get his portrait painted and he was going to do a talk throughout that about how he stays away from technology. So we dug into that.
Like he was going to talk while getting his portrait done.
Yeah, I know. Which his lips would be all over the place in the painting.
Yeah.
So if we're going to name drop about name dropping, I used to live in West Hampstead in London, right? And it seems that a lot of people that are movie stars live in West Hampstead, Hampstead Heath, or any around those type of areas. And so one day, a gentleman going into my local bookstore on the high street opened the door for me, and I looked up and it was like, oh my gosh, Professor McGonagall from, was it McGonagall? No, it was one of the professors from Harry Potter. And then another day, walking down the street, the lady that was the really mean lady that became the principal in Harry Potter, I forget who she was, but she was put in by the Ministry of Magic
with the pink suit and the caps.
Yeah.
And
I'm like,
this is really declined. This has gone downhill.
Her eyes. I'm like, oh my gosh, and then Bill Knightley, lived around the area. He'd be on the train, and it's just like it was nuts. And this is what I love about the UK. It's so different than the US, where everyone be like, oh, hail the movie stars. It's just like, well. It's just going about their life. No one's like, I love that about British people.
But Mark, the other person I met on the train, which after your phenomenal list of people there was Craig Revel Horwood from Strictly Come Dancing. So I don't know if we can. Well, there we go then. That's what I mean. We just can't compete.
So shall we go back to talking about murderous robot toasters like the last episode?
Did we talk about murderous toasters? I don't remember that.
I don't think it was clear if the toaster was a robot or if the toaster had just been possessed by the artificial intelligences.
Right.
Yes, that was Chris.
What I realize that we actually
didn't even say what Steve Mordu's word that he came up with.
We didn't. So what's the word?
The word he came up with, and I was illustrating a concept, which I'll illustrate in a moment, and he came up with this concept of anchor apps. What is an app that is such an anchor inside an organization? And let's define the term further, because it is one that has been invented at the moment, is this concept of an app that is so large that there's no way the organization can go on a whim, let's get rid of that and replace it with something else. It's a serious application. Think of, in the past, ERP systems, they'd never get updated less than 7 years of life, right? Normally 10 plus years, right? You'd update an ERP. How it came about, I've got in the company that I told you that I had resigned from and I finished from in 2 weeks' time, one of our customers is a large customer that has 44,000 premium license seats, sold on an EA, of course. EA standing for Enterprise Agreement, something we want to make clear. We're not talking about enterprise architects.
That was 2 episodes ago.
Yes.
New EA.
My challenge to Ryan is that
Ryan who, Mark?
Cunningham, is that so many times enterprise licenses are sold into organizations, often without the actual organization knowing what they're buying. In other words, a line item of a package of licenses has been put in there. And with the onus on Microsoft sellers to turn that into consumption over the term of their enterprise agreement, along with all the other licenses that have been bundled in there. And so my concern was is that if that organization has been sold on low code, no code.
We don't say low code anymore, Mark. No more low code.
If the organization has been sold on that concept, which they have for since 2016, 2019 maybe, what's happened is that, to coin another phrase of Steve Mordu, a lot of shitty little apps have been built that are really the modern InfoPath form type apps as I see them. Mm-hmm. Or as Ryan Jones, name drop again, calls them craplets. A lot of craplets have been built
I love that phrase.
across the organization. And the thing is that none of these are anchor apps, because at a sweep of a pen, a red line through an Excel spreadsheet, if you could do such a thing, that line item can be deleted and replaced with another app solution that's available off the shelf in the market. And so my concern was, why aren't we telling the big enterprise app stories? Those ones that have, 10,000 terabytes of data sitting in Dataverse, and then, of course, flowing over into a data lake of some sort. Where are the apps that are, evidence collection for federal agencies that are the data that they collect are presented in court and decisions are made, right? These are key kind of app technologies. Where are the apps that are used to coordinate all military personnel in a battle formation that, in my career, I've built on Dynamics 365, right? Butchering the sales app in the past into an XRM solution, and built this for one of the Five Eye nations in the world.
I didn't know New Zealand had an army.
I wasn't working in that country at the time. And
by the way, I do know it's true, and New Zealand is one of the Five Eyes. So don't want hate mail.
I just took that as you are right that it is, but I wasn't even referring to New Zealand.
Should we explain what the Five Eyes are, just so that?
Yeah, what are they, Andrew? You're the most closest to our. Oh no, you're both ex-military, aren't you?
Yeah. So Will, why don't you?
Will, what are the Five Eyes? Will,
are? Do you know what? Could not tell you.
Okay. So the Five Eyes, happy you asked, the Five Eyes are five countries that have very long-standing historic ties to one another, and they share intelligence very closely. So it's not 5 letter I's, but the 5 I's, and they are New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States. They all have something in common. They were all colonized by
the British.
Yeah. Colonized. So Britain and her favorite children plus America. That's who it
Yeah.
is.
So it's the UK-USA agreement and those that have attached themselves to it.
It prefers to go by AUKUS now.
Okay.
Australia, yeah. Anyway, so back to the Anchor apps.
Let's take a quick break.
Are you ready to transform your career in just 90 days? Join me on the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge and unlock your full potential. As I listen to the podcast, enroll now and get 10% off using the code MBAP. That's MBAP at the checkout. Don't miss this opportunity to learn from industry leaders and accelerate your growth. Visit ako.nz365guy.com and start your journey today.
So yeah, those 5 eyes. So yeah, those are all examples I wanted to give of really large apps that have been implemented at scale inside an organization. My concern is that these EA agreements come up for renewal, and this is, well, I was pitching it as a concern to Microsoft, right? Because they're interested in EA's growing, not EA's shrinking. Nobody makes bonus for a net neutral EA. In other words, it didn't go up, it didn't go down, it just stayed static on renewal time. My concern is this. Everybody's talking about Copilot. And so if you've got 2 lines in your EA agreement, one wanting to go and call Copilot for everybody, and one going, we've got these tens of thousands of seats of Power Platform and only 300 of them have ever been used in production, why don't we get rid of the Power App story and go Copilot? Because, wow, that's the talk of the town at the moment. And I said the problem is it's net neutral to Microsoft. One got swapped out for the other. The agreement didn't grow. That was my concern. That's brought me back then to this whole concept. And that's where Steve Mordew go, oh, you're talking about Anchor apps, an app that is so large in the account that to pull it out, would be like ripping up the seabed from the anchor effect. And what I realized is that back in the XRM days, and this is if you've heard that term, this was a concept that actually was coined by Microsoft, and it lasted only about 6 months. And then there were so many complaints inside Microsoft about the concept of XRM that all of a sudden everybody stopped talking about it. It was just like, don't talk about XRM. And the concept was if you took CRM, customer relationship management, dropped off the C, you could have anything relationship management. And so it could be, guide dog relationship management, which was something back in my early start of my career was done for training guide dogs. Their vet bills, how they get placed, all their care, all their training, that type of thing. And you saw it, grants management, or grants relationship management, first aid relationship. And so what we built is these big solutions that had nothing to do with CRM, but did a massive thing, right? They were epic, large solutions that were deployed. And when I look back across my career, some of these were built over 10 years ago. And guess what? They're still in production. They're still being used. Nobody's getting rid of them because they are mission critical to an organization. So I don't know if we define a Anchor app as mission critical. Is it got, like I just came off a call this morning from somebody in Portugal that has 10,000 users a day using the app? That's pretty important to their business, right? Internally. So I consider, okay, that's an Anchor app. We've got the one, Andrew, that we've discussed, which has, 10 terabytes of data in it. That's pretty mission critical. What are you guys seeing in what are these big Anchor apps and why organizations need, and what I'm trying to do is saying, hey, the Power Platform's not just for children and with low code. It's actually for building big enterprise juicy applications.
You covered 2 points there, didn't you? And by the way, really, really love the term Anchor apps. We were discussing just before the podcast that I've not heard the phrase before. I need to follow Steve a bit more. But
you would have had to follow him into the room with all those heavy hitters.
Oh, what a beautiful place to be. But it's I describe Anchor apps, but never had a word for it. So I enjoyed it. But Mark, what you were saying there were two interesting things, which is the categorization of what would be considered an Anchor app, which is those critical solutions, i.e. if the solution goes down, the business is either limping along or has to stop a really important solution. It's not like it's a HR system, which, it's an important solution, but if it goes down, it can come up the next day or the day after, it's going to be okay. This is your manufacturing IoT management solution. It's got to be something that will really affect. But then the other thing you said, which was, but this app has 10,000 users. So what's the graduation curve for something to become an anchor app? So is it the amount of people that is being shared with, the types of people it's being shared with, and actually the fact that an app can go from something that's classed as a productivity type application, like, Dave, the receptionist, just building out a way for people to check in and out of the office, all the way through to then Dave extends that to making sure that when we do our PAT testing on our electrics, that all goes through there, gets signed off. Then all of a sudden, all our air conditioning units, then all our other units, our offices, and suddenly it's a full office management app that affects your ISO accreditation, et cetera, being used by loads. So I like the categorization versus the graduation path there.
So when we defined this, we defined this a long time ago in the Power Platform adoption framework back in 2019. And we said, basically there's 3 tiers of applications. There's 3 tiers of solutions. So productivity, important, and critical. And I think that at the time, because I had come from the background of building anchor apps, I mean, that's what I did for a number of years, is I built anchor apps, first with Dynamics and then with Power Platform. And at the time, I just sort of took it for granted. Of course, we're going to be building mission critical solutions. In later times, we referred to those apps as being core business systems, or part of the core business systems neighborhood in ecosystem oriented architecture. So you could have an anchor app, the technology used to build the anchor app. It could be Power Platform, it could be SAP, it could be Oracle, it could be Workday, it could be something very, very bespoke that you build atop, say, Azure SQL as your data service. But what defines the anchor app is that it is critical to the functioning of the business. An outage in this solution, downtime in this solution is going to stop a critical business function, one or more critical business functions from moving forward, right? So these apps are out there in the world, just not enough of them are being built with Power Platform or Power Platform plus Azure. And the result is that, one, companies have these highly, highly fragmented application landscapes, right? They've got anchor apps that are reliant on multiple different technologies, which means that those technologies need to be supported and maintained and secured and governed all in isolation of one another. And they're squandering this investment that they've made in their premium Power Platform licenses.
I don't know that it's just that they're not out there. I think they're not being talked about. They're not being identified. And one of the things I'm hoping is that if you're listening to this podcast and you know of something that what we've talked about here about an anchor app that exists, that you'd reach out to me directly, because I'd like to have a chat with you about it. I want to do a 5-part podcast series just dedicated to 5 mega apps that are out there in the wild that kind of nobody knows about. And just to really give examples of the art of the possible. So when people because I think it's a mindset that's been set. We've had a mindset since 2016, and these low-code app, the Power App, starting with Power Apps, and then in 2019, the Power Platform, is that it's only low-code. It's only for craplets. It's only for shitty little apps.
But that's the issue.
Yeah, that's the issue, right?
That's what he's pointing out.
It's not a serious enterprise platform in so many eyes of so many people. And then when you get other people, like let's say ServiceNow is an example, right, which is considered a low-code platform, but they've pitched themselves totally differently to the market. It's an enterprise solution they've pitched. They've sold like that, where I think that and so therefore people go, it's an enterprise solution. But when you go, anybody can build with this in that productivity space, they go, oh, it's the modern Excel. Oh, we don't have to worry about that. We don't, whatever people do, it's Excel. It's just Excel in the cloud. That's fine. Let them do what they want. We're never going to build our evidence collection process in Excel. As a law enforcement agency, would never do that. We'll go and get a proper system, not realizing that they actually have the proper system, but their mindset is you can't do that in the anyone can build on it.
It's a perception. It's an absolute perception-based thing. And Microsoft's marketing engine cranked too hard on the term citizen developer, on the term low code, and it's a constant sales cycle that we have to position to our clients when we are faced with them. But you can't do that with low code, where we suddenly have to reel off all the clients that they will know of, that they would have used a Power App solution for, that they would have never known. Like, we've rolled out some of the largest ones for central government clients that everybody in the UK has to use, and they'll have no idea they're going through a Power Pages model type of approach there.
I think, just as an aside also, though, that the Microsoft community around Power Platform has not done itself. I'm not talking about the marketing engine. I'm talking about the community of technologists around Power Platform. They've not done themselves any favors, right? It drives me crazy when I hear experienced professional people, right, who do this every day and have true bona fide expertise in this technology, refer to themselves as citizen developers. It drives me crazy because first of all, it discredits them. And second of all, it discredits the technology that they and so many others work on. There are legitimate people out there who are building, who are citizen developers and who are building some mighty, useful, I'm not going to call them craplets. I'm going to call them toys. I'm going to be positive here. And they're mighty useful. So, but legitimately, I don't want to take anything away from someone who is using the technology to make the work life of them or their team better, right? But there's so much more that can be done in the hands of engineers.
But this is the same principle, and although it's completely different, it's very similar to those that used Excel to do some naughty things like equals sum, this cell plus that, to those that started applying VBA across the top and did some hardcore stuff with that. So when you look at what actually business users build, and I hate the term system developer, I refuse to use it anymore, it's business users, when they're using the productivity side of those tools, the equals sum and plus and minus, they build some really cool stuff. But to make it scalable, to make it appropriate, and to use it in a professional way, then we know that it's a lot more hardcore than that. And I think we need a better term for it, because we've got a tool that can be used in an advanced way or a simple way. And I don't like the term system developer.
Here's the thing, XRM back in the day was what we were doing. I mean, I can count on less than half a hand, 3 fingers, the number of sales relationship management systems I put in, like CRMs. All of them were XRM solutions. We would take the product and turn it into something else. And we used to beg Microsoft back then, why don't you give us what back then we called a headless SKU? Don't give us all that. Just give us the whole model-driven piece and let us build. Yes. They turned around, they gave us that with the Power Platform and Dataverse, right? They gave us that, and then they stopped talking, and then they never talked about how amazing it is. And, here's the other thing. Why do we talk about, 5 different workloads that sit on the Power Platform? And what I'm talking about, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, Power Pages, and now Copilot Studio. Why don't we just talk about, everything has all those in it? Why don't we call it the Power Platform, right? And why don't we have a sales SKU, a license SKU, that's for the Power Platform that allows you to build solutions, right? It's not just about apps. It's not just about automation. It's about the whole story.
Absolutely. One ring to rule them all.
Yeah. Oh, so I like that.
Yes. Well, okay. So let me ask you guys. Let's make this real. I want to talk about some anchor apps, some of our favorite anchor apps that we've seen through our careers in this technology. So, Mark, go ahead.
I'll go first. Main roads in WA, Western Australia. Just to give you an idea of sizing of this bit of land, it's 11 times the size of the United Kingdom, right? That's one state in Australia. It's large. Back in the day, we built an XRM solution that managed every piece of road, every bridge, every light fixture, every signpost on that entire network in what we would modernly call Dynamics 365 sales. Right? There was no sales component. What we did is that we used the offline comm component. We put it in a toughened device that sit out in road workers' trucks. we put ArcGIS into the mix. When that person went down the road, if they saw a pothole, they would GPS dot it with the circle on screen to say it was this size, and it would auto-calculate what type of fix needed to be done. No human. And this was like 8-9 years ago, right? Before the Power Platform ever existed or anything. Now, if you did that today, you would 100% not use a dynamic SKU. You would use the Power Platform.
There are many who mistakenly would use the dynamic SKU today.
You know, just thinking even when I said that, maybe I would use field service as part of what we were doing. Now, when we built that solution, it was because we could build it cheaper than the Oracle off-the-shelf solution for managing infrastructure assets like that. We were able to build it cheaper. Well, guess what? It's still in use today, right? It's still, and you know what? That organization ain't ripping it out in 5 minutes because it's every one of the Hivers folks out on the road, they know how to use that app now, 8 years on. They know how to do it. They know how to put in data. When it came back to the office and got Wi-Fi access, it would do a sync. It would then assign out all the work orders for the, it would decide, if the defect ratio on a 1 kilometer or 1 mile strip was X, it needed the whole resurface done. If it was lower than Y, it would only have the, rudimentary fixes done to the potholes on that area. And I'm just giving you as an example. That's what I call an anchor app. It's an enterprise-grade app. It won't get pulled out within 5 years.
Yep. Will, what about you?
Sorry, mate. I just had someone ping me on Teams. So can you quickly take your turn?
I'll take. Are they going to edit that out? Or,
yeah.
No. Who cares? Go for it.
No.
It might be, actually, it might be edited out. Who knows? Anyhow, go for it.
We'll see.
Yeah.
So my favorite examples from that era come from, I was involved with app development within the military and within a lot of public sector agencies that did a combination of things, that everything from keeping track of who's jumping out of which plane and how many times they've jumped to human resources, managing HR and personnel across organizations with 100,000 people in it, right? Managing the electronic medical records of thousands and thousands of people. One of the anchor apps and it's not even an anchor app. It was an anchor ecosystem of apps. So we didn't call it this at the time. I worked with the US and New Zealand mission to Antarctica, the scientific mission to Antarctica. And we built solutions for them. It was how all of HR happened, right? So it tracked every single employee, every single scientist, every single person being taken into the organization, what their medical workup was, their psychological profile, their medical history, their blood type, right? So if someone was injured in a remote place, you could identify the correct blood donor. We called it the walking blood bank. What else? It ran air terminal operations. We built apps that ran air terminal operations at the coastal stations in Antarctica and at the South Pole. And because of the way that the Earth turns and the alignment of satellites, we had to deploy on-premise infrastructure at the South Pole because we would sometimes go a long time with, a number of hours without connectivity. And it also meant that I got to say that I was part of the team, the only team, to my knowledge, that ever got to deploy Microsoft business applications at the South Pole, which is awesome. One of the coolest.
Golden, right?
So
but once
cool.
Again, a great example. Will.
So a couple spring to mind. I'll omit names, but one that I just think's incredibly cool because, and take in mind, mine was never pre-Power Platform. When I really got into customizing C, etc., it was due to Power Apps and Canvas Apps first launching. I was a finance supply chain management guy, or AX7 or AX4 before then. So keep that in mind through this. So two things. One of them is, and I can't say the name, but it's going to be pretty obvious. It is a test that you take when you're around 17 in the UK. You have up to 1 million people take this because it's not just the UK that actually feeds into the system. And that the Power Platform, what people won't realize is the Power Platform actually manages all that. So all the behind the scenes booking, all the behind the scenes actually making sure that you attend on time, that you have the right people there at the, you're getting the right exams, you're getting the right questions. That's all managed by Power Platform. Huge scalability. But that also feeds into further down your journey, that once you pass that test successfully and you get issued what you need to get issued from that if you have any criminal convictions, if you receive anything that goes against that also gets stamped as well. And then this goes further and further down to inspections of the thing that you're getting to use due to that certification you received. Sorry, I'm being slightly cryptic, but it's not that cryptic at all.
The English education system is baffling to me and seems very convoluted, and I'm actually quite nervous about when my daughter has to enter it, because I just think
it's going to be perfectly fine, Andrew. Your brain, it's and your DNA, it's going to be perfect. The other one, just to mention quickly, because I hadn't seen it done by this point. It's very similar to something you've been speaking about. We got approached by a company that specialism was actually building airports and then making sure they were operationally ready. And they wanted what they referred to as an operational readiness assessment test. This was
clearly not Berlin, because
probably you haven't seen the solution.
If you're out there, Mats, I'm sorry for offending your people.
But this was checking everything from the ability to check off and map out the routes that people will take through the airport, through to dropping their luggage on, getting on their plane, making sure the runway and the runway surface and everything was just spot on. They could measure every single test, every single route they had to take, and actually collect all the evidence all from within the solution. It was absolutely humongous. And the guy who actually built it was a guy called Marco Cruz. He still works at Curve Digital. Now he worked with me at Hitachi prior.
No advertisements. Come on, man. We do this.
That's my version of name dropping.
This is not a sales call.
But yeah, and that to me really showed to the client, at least, it was started off as a proof of concept, and they thought, actually, low code, can do this.
Yeah.
And that was when the penny dropped for them. And after that, it just took off. It really took off, and they were all in.
So I'm curious now, listening to Will's examples. Mark, you and I both went with an old and a long times ago example. Mm-hmm. Do you have a modern, like a recent, this is proper Power Platform example?
Are you asking me?
I am.
Well, I've already said mine.
No,
Yeah.
Will,
Yeah, Will, that was a really, really good example. I'm just trying to rank my brain now for something that I would consider.
He's too senior now. He doesn't get his fingers dirty.
He's not hands-on enough.
Hang on a second. Too senior. In 2 weeks, I'll be a freelancer. I'll have no title, role, anything. Hey, Andrew.
Is that what we're calling it now? The worst kept secret in the industry, right?
We the secret's still a secret. Anyhow, what was I saying? So I've been involved in apps that are, or solutions, 100% built on the Power Platform that had massive ROI, and they won't be ripped out because of that reason. But they only did a slither of something inside an organization. In other words, this app that I'm thinking of only affected the executives in the organization. It had a $27 million impact per annum on that executive layer of the organization. So it won't be thrown out from that perspective. But the other, 100,000 employees outside of that, 5,000 odd aren't using it, because it's not designed for them.
I think this is actually a really good point, and it's probably where I believe we'll choose to end this one here in a moment, because it gets us back to the beginning where we were talking about what really makes an anchor app. And to me, I think that an anchor app, you can have an anchor app that's very high impact, but relatively few users. That's not necessarily exactly what is best for consuming licenses from a Microsoft perspective. Or I think you can have an anchor app that is high impact and a lot of users. So to me, a couple examples that come to mind. There was one, I worked with a Fortune 100 insurance firm several years ago. And by the time we were done, they were using Power Platform to manage the entire process of updating their product lines, making rate adjustments, et cetera, et cetera. And in that world, right, in financial services, you make a small percentage adjustment, and that can impact your profitability and other financial metrics wildly. There probably weren't, there weren't tens of thousands of users there, but at last count, they were running about $2 billion of business through this solution. On the other hand, I actively work with a law firm that we'll just say this is a law firm that has had a profound effect on people's lives, even though probably almost nobody has heard of it. And they have been in a process of completely replatforming case management onto Power Platform. So this is not customer service. This is not you're running a call center or you're managing field service. This is managing legal matters and case and court cases, right? This all happens for them on Power Platform. There's not a single person in the organization who is not using this particular Anchor app every single day to transact the core business, the core purpose that this firm exists. And it's all happening in Power Platform. And I think it's marvelous.
I mean, I could have shared another one, but I only learned about it this morning. It's not mine, and it's a story that is going to be on the podcast in the coming weeks. That's dedicated just to it, and it's going to be a good story. Okay, we're going to wrap up here. But my call to action, folks, if you're listening to this, please reach out, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty findable there. Send me a message and say, hey, I could tell you about an Anchor app or an app that fits a profile of like what we've been talking about. And let's have a chat because if everyone's happy, I would love to do just a dedicated podcast on that topic and really, educate the market about the art of the possible on the Power Platform because it's so much better than when I started my career with XRM. It's so much more powerful. It can scale like never before. One of the solutions I built in the past was a full payroll system on top of Dynamics 365 sales. It was the stupidest thing I could have ever done. It was when I believed that, the hammer, Dynamics CRM, everything was a nail and I could smash it with it. The headaches it caused me, the technical debt it created was just off the Richter scale. Would I build it now on the Power Platform? Absolutely, because back then we never had Azure behind us, and you could do the scale that we needed this payroll system to do.
And Mark, we need one. One doesn't exist. We need one.
Mark, don't worry. Many Dynamics people out there would still, they still take the I'm holding the Dynamics hammer, everything must be a nail. That is our mission on the Ecosystems podcast, to convince Dynamics land that Dynamics is not always the answer.
Yeah. It's one of the apps on the Power Platform. It's not necessarily an app that you need to use. With that, see you around, please message, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao, guys.
Bye, guys.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. If you want to be a supporter of the show, please check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Stay safe out there and shoot for the stars.